You know what's great about it waking up and it being 56 degrees outside?
No.
We're officially back into jeans season, which means I can wear the same pair of pants for a month and no one will judge me.
You know what's not great, though, and this is a temporary condition that will repeat itself later in the year, is how frickin' dark it is when we get up.
Yeah.
Like, my wife's alarm goes off at 6-something, and it's dark. It's not like dawnish dark.
No, it's
like
dark.
just
It's
nighttime. Yeah.
It's dark. And
When's
then we're
daylight savings? It must be this month, right?
I think it's like I bet some
beginning of
internet
November.
daylight savings 2019. Google tells us it's November 3rd.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah. So we have another 3 weeks of this. Then we'll go back to semi-normal, and then we'll just experience it. Then January will come, and it will just be terrible again.
And January doesn't offer much. I mean, the holidays are over. Like, it literally starts with a bang with New Year's Eve.
Sure.
And then there's nothing. Like, January and February are just kind of.
Well, there's like a Martin Luther King 3-day holiday, which everyone probably appreciates. There's my wife's birthday happens to be in very late January, so we have that or whatever. But yeah, God, the dead of winter is such a wasteland. It's just, I don't know.
And then at least late February, you're kind of looking forward to spring.
Oh, I'm looking forward to spring now.
Yeah.
I just went out for a walk. It's kind of wet and dreary. And, the leaves starting to turn. It's nice because you don't like sweat like a pig exactly because it is 50-something degrees. I mean, yeah. No, I do too, actually. But I don't know. I think the light is more important than the heat in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of light, Sony shone a little light on their PlayStation. PlayStation 5. I mean, they revealed, well, first off, like 6 months ago, they revealed this much. And now they're up to about here.
Well, so I sort of didn't appreciate the significance of this announcement in a way, because I thought we all knew that it was coming next holiday and that it was called the PlayStation 5. But apparently those two bits of information were, in fact, they were confirming them, I guess. I mean, obviously that's what they're going to do, but I guess this is the first time they actually explicitly said it.
Yeah. They should have called it PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 360 just to screw with
PlayStation
Microsoft.
X.
Yeah.
It's running on a new OS, PlayStation OS X.
Yeah. But then they should have announced DualShock X, which would not work with PlayStation X to complete the Microsoftification of.
No, it would have been like DualShock V.
Yeah. Just that would be great.
Oh boy.
There's a bunch of little stuff in there. They talked a little bit about the new controller, which the one thing that I think is actually pretty neat, and we'll see how it plays out and if developers take advantage of it. So the triggers that are on the controller have adjustable tension. So
right. So I don't have my controller here.
What they were talking about doing is like if you're shooting a shotgun, which has a slower rate of fire, the tension might be higher, or if you're shooting a pistol.
It would also kind of give you that little bling, that after verb kind of thing.
Yeah.
If that's a term.
Yep. So that's kind of neat. There was a microphone spot in the controller, but they would not talk about it. So I'm assuming that there's going to be some sort of, what was the name of that Sony dog, that mechanical dog thing that they had?
Aibo?
That's going to be, what's it?
Aibo, I think.
That's going to be the name of their Cortana. It's going to be Aibo, I bet.
Aibo, it should be. That's a good idea.
Because it looked like you're going to be able to talk to that controller somehow, although we'll see. They weren't talking about that. What else? Hardware ray tracing confirmed, but that's exact same thing as Scarlett from Microsoft.
Yep.
And the other interesting thing, which you can sort of do with Xbox, is you can install the single player separately from multiplayer games. So if you have a disc, like the physical disc, which they confirmed again, you can put it in there, and then you can install just the single player, or you can install just the multiplayer, which Microsoft sort of has that, but not quite as clean.
Yep. Yeah, I think a developer could choose how that works. In fact, one of the very first Xbox One games, I think it was, the Rise of Rome game, whatever that was. The Rise, I think was the name of it. Roman game. When you installed it, if I recall correctly, it would actually ask you which thing do you think you're going to be playing first? Multiplayer or whatever the choices were, and it would optimize the download for that. so that you could begin playing that thing correctly. Or first, what you're describing is kind of interesting because I can't speak for all games, obviously, but for games that do include both single and multiplayer campaigns, like Call of Duty, for example, those things are actually completely different games. Like they're not the same. It's not like it's a fork in the code. Like they're literally different programs.
Yeah.
And in the case of Call of Duty, they have other ones too, like Blackout and so forth. So zombies, those are all completely different. Like if you switch between those in the game, like there's a huge delay because you're really just loading a new game. Like the Call of Duty loader that comes up first is just like almost like a stub thing. It does nothing except direct you to the right, the place you want to go. So that makes sense. I mean, doing that, it's already, games are pretty much already structured that way. So
yep,
it's good.
Yep. Yeah, and so there's going to be no surprise, a new UI for the PlayStation 5.
Not the what do they call it? Thing cross.
I call it bare bones.
It's got the wavy, nonsense. Yeah, that's been around for a long time.
It has. So I'll be curious to see. But this is just the very, very slow drip of information, and it'll probably lead right up until probably like a spring big announcement for the thing, because I mean that's what they typically do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, there you go. That's the what we know about the PlayStation Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, we should probably discuss briefly, because it's stupid, the petition to get Microsoft to either change the Duo or make a new version of the Duo that runs on top of Windows, like Windows 10X specifically. I thought we all got the memo. Did we not get the memo?
Yeah,
Can we print you out a new copy of the memo? Because Microsoft abandoned the phone market in 2015, guys, and they're not
after about $10 billion.
Yeah. They communicated exactly what they were going to do. They were going to wind it down over a couple of years. They did exactly that. They stopped talking about it. And I appreciate people holding a candle for the past, but because God, nobody wants to live in the past more than I do. But it's gone. It's over. So there's real innovation occurring from Microsoft on mobile. You can see some of it in the Microsoft Launcher, which is going to be enhanced perhaps dramatically for this Duo device. I strongly recommend that people who were former Windows Phone fans or whatever pay attention to this stuff, because there's a whole user experience, user interface thing going on that is a generation past all that tile stuff. And because you were one of the first people that saw some of the leaks on Light OS or whatever, 10X now, this very Chrome OS looking thing, that they are literally walking back from tiles in Windows. So it's over. You can look at the tiles that are in Windows 10 today as kind of a vestigial thing from the past, like the little tiny rear leg that a whale has that nobody can see. It's just kind of still there.
That's
but
not where I expected that conversation to go, but here we are talking about whale legs.
Because if you look at the skeleton of a whale, they actually still have a little vestigial rear leg. Two of them, I guess.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So it's over. That's all I'm trying to say. So, let's put our energy where it matters. And I guess the thing I really wanted to say, which I did say in the post I made about it, which is there's something inherently selfish and insular to the small group of people, most of whom are probably not developers. They're just like these enthusiast types who can't let go of the past. But I'm projecting it could be developers too, who prefer to see the thing that they want happen over the thing that makes sense for most people. Like for this platform to succeed, it has to reach a much bigger audience than the audience of people who would buy the thing they're describing. And that audience could happen with an Android-based device. So it's so wrong-headed. It's like Microsoft promised, Microsoft, like every other company, first of all, it's not a promise. It's not like you guys did the pinky swear thing. They launch products and solutions and services, whatever. Sometimes they fail, And the one thing they always have done a good job, and I think that there's not enough focus on this, is moving developers forward with environments or frameworks or whatever, programming ways to make apps that are at least familiar to them. And these days, and we're closing in on 20 years of this, folks, it's kind of what I would call .NET based. Not necessarily exactly managed code, but those super clean frameworks that started with the .NET framework, went through WinForms, WPF, UWP, Whatever we think of these platforms, if you know them, there are tools like Xamarin that can help you get on mobile that should be familiar to you. And we don't know exactly what they're going to do for the Duo thing, but the one thing I think we can all rest easy on is they will offer developers a way forward onto these devices and to reuse code if you want to have something on Windows and on Android, specifically on those dual screen devices. So let's let them explain that. They will do it poorly. They're Microsoft, but it's not fair to hold their feet to the fire for this. It's just not fair. It's not right.
They came, they saw, they wrote it down, and we're moving on.
Yeah.
Plus, Microsoft had this Azure government thing, and for reasons I don't understand, they live streamed it, but you had to have a password and username to log in, which they conveniently provided me. It was a fine live stream. Like, there was nothing.
It was to keep out the Iranians, Brad.
And so they announced this thing, and so they have a service called Azure Data Box, or Azure Data Box Edge, and it's basically a server that's Azure, and you can like take it with you to wherever you're working, connect it up, and then you've got some Azure services right there. And so they announced this other thing today, and I should have made this joke in my post, which I'm now regretting I did not. They announced this other thing. It's a 10-pound little box that has Azure and AI and all sorts of crap on it. It runs on a battery. It can fit in a backpack. It doesn't need to be connected to the internet.
Wow. Was it codenamed Dirty Bomb? Like what is this thing?
It's a computer. It's
a computer. They invented a backpack computer.
If I came to you, Paul, and said, hey, I've got a device that runs on battery. You'd probably say it's a laptop that runs on battery.
Right.
It can do computations. It can do AI. It can do ML.
It apps. It accesses services.
If you connect it to the internet, it will connect into Azure.
Right.
You call that a laptop.
Point of this? This is for in the field.
Yeah. So the scenario they talked about, which I understand, it's a really specialized piece of hardware. What it does is, so imagine you're at like a search and rescue, and it can take, the example they talked about is it can take live drone images, a video feed from it, and use AI, ML, or whatever to look for people in those images as they come down. And so it's just a real specialized piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are these things not called Azure Stack? I'm confused.
It should have called it Azure Cubes.
Right. You saw that awesome Azure thing they had at when we were in Miami. It looked like the baddest gaming PC ever made. Like, it was awesome looking. I think that was an Azure Stack device. I think that was Azure.
Well, that was for like moving data, I think is what it was for.
Okay.
So, yeah, we got that going on. There's something else. I don't know. Yeah.
Not much. I mean,
not much other than PlayStation 5 specs.
Right. Major controversy around last week's announcement. There is an ongoing thing about like Panos's performance. I have to say, you wouldn't have watched this because why would you? But we had that younger guy from Twit host the show this past week as Leo was out, and he had never watched a Microsoft presentation before. So this is his first experience with Panos Panay. His take on that presentation, which was a little off, right? I mean, or maybe a lot off from his normal presentation. But I think some of the comments he made are generally applicable to this guy's style. I mean, he kind of found him to be kind of preachy and pedantic. And like, now I'm going to bring down the light from Mount Olympus and shine it in your face because you unwashed mashers have no idea what's going on. Like, it was a really interesting perspective because maybe I'm just used to it or something. Like, I don't really see it that way, I guess. But I think the bigger issue, of course, is that Panos seemed a little out of sorts. And a lot of people are like, yeah, with all the leaks, it's no wonder. And come on, guys. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think he was just sick. I think he's got two little kids. You know how this is. It's flu season. Or whatever, and, the kids just went back to school and they came home with all the little diseases that their friends have. Like, that's what kids do. It's too bad because again, I've seen some negative feedback to that event, and certainly there are little things we could pick on, like the fans. But as far as like the event itself, and as far as the content, as far as the devices they announced, I mean, I thought that was one of the best Surface events of all time in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it definitely rivals the one from several years ago where they announced the original Surface Book.
Yeah, when they had the Thunderstruck song.
Yep.
Yeah, that was exciting. Like that was something really cool going on there. Obviously, people forget, but that's also when they announced the Lumia 950.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way: when Panos went up there and said, "This isn't my phone," and then said, "Here's the Lumia,"
and he blew through that. He was that part of the presentation was actually much like last week's presentation as far as his kind of lackluster, being or whatever. But I it wasn't presented in the same kind of rock and roll fashion. But I thought as far as what they did, I mean, my God, like I really want like a Surface laptop. Like I will buy a Surface laptop. That's crazy, you know.
The 15-inch?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically a MacBook Pro with a good keyboard and a touchscreen.
But I bought a MacBook Pro 15-inch and I returned it in part because it was so freaking heavy and huge. Like that thing is a tank. You know, in that 15-inch like Surface Pro that you have, I mean, same thing. Like it's a beautiful machine.
Oh yeah, this thing is big and heavy. I don't take it everywhere.
Yeah, it's just too much. Like I feel like this. If you apply the Dell XPS 13 thing, where you take a 12-inch form factor and you jam a 13-inch screen into it, you move up market with it. Or up size with it. No one has ever really achieved what I think they have achieved with the Surface laptop. Like HP makes 15-inch versions of this Spectre X360. They're still tanks. Like even though the bezels are smaller and they can make the form factor smaller. The 13-inch for some reason it works great. When you move it to 15, it never does. It never has. I've never seen one. And I think they finally Microsoft somehow made that work. It looks like with the Surface laptop. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I will tell you. And if they ever, I'm sure they're going to post a video for this from the Satya thing today. He on stage, totally different than he was at the Surface event. Like you could tell that he enjoys talking about the enterprise, security, and government a lot more than he cares talking about hardware.
He's more.
I mean, that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah. I appreciated. I will say him being at that event, the Surface event, was in some ways a highlight only because he was on stage for so little time.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like they misuse Satya Nadella at some events. Meaning that he's just not particularly, you don't want to sit there and listen to him for 2 hours. Like it's just, he's a little, his voice is a little robotic. It's kind of tough. But he did a nice little short intro thing, and then he kind of wrapped it up at the end. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I want this guy used at these events.
Yeah.
So at this thing that you're talking about, was he like the primary guy, or how did that work?
But he presented in a way that was, dare I say, more entertaining than he typically is. And he wasn't going on about these like dramatic, like he was just talking about features and stuff that they're doing. And not
that must
so
have been
much
nice for him.
Yeah.
You know, that's his world. He's an engineer.
Yeah. Not this nebulous, like, compute in the clouds. Like he was like,
you're not changing the world for good anymore. We're just delivering good solutions for our customers. Is that
well, he was speaking to military customers, so I don't know. They're changing the world.
We're changing the world.
Let's put it that way.
Raising a forest is one way to change the world.
Yeah, I mean, delivering freedom one explosive at a time. So.
Oh, well.
All right, you got anything else for today, Paul?
No, I guess not.
All right. Well, folks, that wraps it up for this edition of First Drink Daily. We will catch all of you right back here tomorrow.